Please like, subscribe, and be sure to click that bell button for regular and exciting indie film content and your chance to be the first to engage with the Liftoff Global Network of Film Festivals as we embark on launching the careers of the filmmakers of tomorrow.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's stream. Today we are joined by two filmmakers and actors who picked up an award from the Berlin Liftoff Film Festival. Before I introduce them, if you're watching this live and you have any questions throughout the stream, we will do our best to answer any questions that you may have or pass them on to the correct creative. So first of all, we have Suad and we also have Alex. Suad, why don't you introduce yourself and just tell us what your project is and what your role was before we move on to Alex and we'll get the film rolling in the background.
Okay, so my name is Suad and I was a director and writer for the short film Breakfast.
Nice. Perfect. And Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex. I am the actor and writer of Liebesträume that we're about to see.
Perfect. So as I get this rolling up here, and if you can, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind the piece?
Inspiration behind Liebesträume was certainly a pandemic piece for sure. It really was just the inspiration of feeling isolated, and it's kind of a commentary on how capitalistic America kind of leaves you feeling after you can't engage in making money anymore.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. And one thing that strikes me when watching this project is the location. How did you have access to this location?
Well, it's actually a very interesting story. When we started writing, I was in the workshop with Lucien Emile Augustus Frick. That's actually my cousin, and he is the director for the piece. And I had this idea, and we're workshopping. It was completely online. We're just workshopping through FaceTime and just talking about the concepts. He's out of St. Louis. So we're just trying to figure out, okay, how is this possible? How can we do this? It's only somewhat, I think maybe, 3, 4, 5 months into the pandemic, where we're just trying to figure out what we can do creatively to kind of push us through.
Absolutely.
What is it? All the feelings that come up, you're stagnant. There's this echoing kind of feeling of how people in America, they ask, what do you do? It's basically, how do you make money? And people tie themselves to this image of their job. They identify themselves with what they do for the money. And who are you if you can't go to work, if you can't make money, and you don't have that kind of grounding, weird force. So we kind of constrained ourselves to what was available. Lucien was out on the streets of St. Louis trying to look for a space that wasn't completely confined to COVID restrictions, because it was, obviously big time here in New York. That's kind of the epicenter in America, but certainly it just kind of went west, and in St. Louis, by the time we were filming, it's heightened in St. Louis. So he found through his connections an office building that was basically abandoned. There was no one there because everyone is home, and obviously there's a lot of COVID restrictions. So we were able to film there just through contacts, which kind of led itself to other technical problems. It was just kind of problem solving to get this piece across. Very, very fun and interesting, for sure.
Thank you. Suad, I was wondering if you could mute your microphone. I think there's a bit of reverb going on, but if you could just mute it, that would be great when Alex is speaking. You mentioned something there about problem solving, and that is essentially what filmmaking is. Getting on set and then being like, oh shit, how do we get over this? Exactly. So apart from some of the problems that you mentioned, were there any other massive hurdles that you had to overcome?
Oh boy. Well, there were all hurdles, really. just think about how many people it takes to make a film, and we were limited to two.
Yeah.
We were limited to Lucienne and myself. So how are we going to, we have the ideas, we're talking about the ideas, how are the ideas going to be visually represented on screen? And so that's going to be obviously the location that we were talking about, finding something that's very sterile. I wanted to go for some sort of like 1980s Wall Street motif, lots of like beiges and gross yellows, you know, and really kind of blow out the screen with all this weirdness. You have the props, you have kind of this through line of yellow throughout the entire piece. But how are you going to get the costumes? Who's going to alter the costumes? How is that going to play when everyone is scared out of their mind? During this pandemic, lots of mask wearing, but you know, are these strangers that I'm asking to alter this suit going to be okay with like touching me and putting pins on this coat as I'm wearing it? You know, going to their place on location where they're altering it. You know, it's very strange. Going to St. Louis, finding places that are open to supply food, and you know, where can we rent things? Everything was most definitely a hurdle. One technical aspect, sound was a big thing. We didn't realize how much sound was going to be affected. Even with all the microphone solutions that you have, it's still a giant space, and it's still all just linoleum and concrete. So basically, all of the sound that we produced was unusable. So everything had to be done in post. Which was certainly a challenge for Lucienne. Lots of late nights in front of the computer, just in the dark editing dungeon. So I'm certainly thankful for that. But yeah, it's amazing how easy everything seems until a global pandemic comes along, and then just everything is hard.
How many days was this shoot?
It was a 2-day shoot. We fit it into 2 days. Actually, I guess you could say it was 2.5. But certainly it was very early mornings and late night to capture all the things that you see. And it was kind of it was fun to be able to go back to that time where it's just like, hey, let's get just another buddy together and make a film. And I mean, to be limited by so many different things, you know, he was lighting and gaffing, he was running sound. I was kind of, you know, obviously the actor, but at the same time trying to look at the dailies and see if there's anything that we can cover. But yeah, just cramming it all into. I flew out to St. Louis, just cramming it all into this short period of time, and you know, it's kind of this guerrilla filmmaking, so to speak.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, great experience, I guess. In some ways, like you were saying, a nightmare, because filmmaking is all about collaboration and bringing different people and their expertise together. But also really cool experience to have to do it all, so that you can take that sort of forwards into your next project, when hopefully it's not just two people, because the pandemic is behind us, hopefully, mostly. So yeah, what would you say are sort of like the main lessons that you'll be taking forwards into next projects?
Oh boy. This piece is really fun because it's not just like one inspiration. Well, there was, I guess you could say, it kind of distills down to one inspiration, but typically you have things that inspire you to make a piece, and this was a lot more holistic. I mean, what's the takeaway? People. To be thankful for people, to be thankful that you have the opportunity to make film, to make art, collaboration. It makes you thankful for family. You know, it makes you thankful for being able to hug people. It makes you thankful for so many things, because this is so distilled from the pandemic, and it's
Yeah.
just basically the product of such, just the things that are living in your imagination as you are completely having that existential crisis in your apartment, looking out. I mean, like I was, as I was experiencing and workshopping this idea in my head, I live in Brooklyn on a street that's a thoroughfare crosstown in Brooklyn, and ambulances use it to go to the hospital in Fort Greene. In the first, I would say, 6 months of the pandemic, there would be at least 10 ambulances that would go by my apartment every single day, and to the point where it could be like 20 or 30. It was extreme, and that's how I knew that it was real. This was crazy. So to have that separation and that isolation, and then coming back into the fold and being like, wow, we take for granted so much, whether it is making money, but also all of the fears and little things in the film that I wanted to express, where he's Googling all of these things, how much money should I have by the time I'm 40? How much should I have in my 401k? All these worries, and then you realize after going through it, like, there's so much to already be thankful for, that we don't necessarily sit down and appreciate, like being able to shake someone's hand. This this wonderful thing. Anecdotally, the scene at the top of the film where I'm sitting at a vending machine and I get the M&Ms. We could not find a vending machine for the life of us, and it was because they removed in Lucien's area, they removed vending machines because of COVID. Because of touching, because the consumption, all this different stuff. So in fact, he had to go on location several towns away trying to find some place, and he found the vending machine quite some time afterwards to then insert it into the film. So it's you just take for granted so many things, just so many simple things, and also what is that saying? Necessity is mother of invention. Is that right? It's
so
it's
true.
fun.
We talk about this in filmmaking quite a lot, actually. How sometimes the weirdest positives can come out of contingency as well.
Absolutely, and to be bound and having to produce whilst being bound is quite very interesting. You just get really creative.
Yeah.
So I guess the takeaway is anything's possible.
Yeah. Perfect. Anything is possible. Definitely, we've seen some crazy things over the pandemic.
Just when you think you've seen it all.
Yeah, but anything is possible. I think that's a good motto to live by, and just a reminder that you can do it as well.
Absolutely.
So the film has now come to an end, but I still have a few questions I'd quite like to ask you. And we talked about this just before coming on live, and I find it really interesting to get to the root of why filmmakers, actors, creatives want to get into this amazingly crazy industry. So what moment was it for you that you realized that this was where you wanted to be?
Oh boy. Yeah, I think we touched on this, where it's a very big question. And for me, I started as an actor, or my love for acting, as just a wee lad. I was in grade school or primary. I remember just participating in a talent show, and this talent show, I did some sort of comedy, farcical musical thing, and it made a lot of people laugh. People had a really good time, and I think that was the first time that I saw an audience reaction or interaction with the audience in a certain way, and it felt really good. Of course, you feel good when you make people laugh, sure, but also just that interaction with people and getting that direct feedback. And so I went into theater school, and primarily was doing theater, and decided to go onto on camera because it's just a different medium and it's fun and it's interesting and very, very different beast.
Definitely.
It's very modular, and it doesn't necessarily have that same through line as you would having that complete experience as an actor on stage. But certainly, it's a director's medium. It's a visual medium, visual storytelling without words. And I find that to be quite very interesting. If you were to distill it down as an actor, it's very much of having the opportunity to say what you can't.
Yeah.
It's almost like in musicals, when things get to be so emotional, and that's why musicals exist. Things become so emotional that you can only communicate through song. That it's welling up so much that you have to sing. And I think it's the same thing just in real life, where things become so grave and so emotional that words don't mean anything. It's the absence of words. It's between the words. It's what you are saying without saying it. It's the look. It's all of these little nuances that we understand as nonverbal body language that we communicate with, 90% of the time. You can say, have a nice day 73 different times. It's not really about the words. And it's primarily words in theater. So filmmaking can provide a audience interaction that's a lot more nuanced and can be quite striking. Cinematography can be absolutely amazing and beautiful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What an answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Some people just turn around and say, oh, it was Gladiator or Star Wars or something like that. But
the
great
first time I
films,
saw
great
The
films.
Matrix, Keanu just, that was it. That was it.
Well, thank you, and good luck with everything that you have coming up. What is next for you?
Well, we do have some showings of the film with a few different festivals in Brooklyn, Indiana. There's Palm Springs International,
Yeah,
cool.
as well as what is the next one? Bolton International Film Festival.
great.
So yeah, there's still a line that's coming down that should be quite interesting and exciting.
Very
Fantastic.
cool.
Well, good luck with them, and I hope you can go to as many of them as possible.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Nice to be
So
on.
we're going to move on. So Suad, I will get your film going here. We're only going to watch a little snippet of this film as it's still doing the festival circuit as well. So I'll get that loaded up. But in the meantime, Suad, why don't you tell us the inspiration behind why you wanted to make this piece?
Well, I guess inspiration wouldn't be the right word for this particular work, because it was more of an urge, because it came out of a social problem. It's a very different route, I'd say, to the usual, desire to make art. It was more of a necessity, because we were in a situation where I was living in Baku at the time, and there was working with many different artists in my previous work, and there was a massive spike in domestic violence cases, and I started having conversations about this with fellow women artists and activists, and we started bouncing ideas off each other, and we thought that it's time to start speaking up about this and making work about this, and some have been making work about this already for a while from different disciplines. We met with different psychologists and counselors who tackle this problem on a daily basis. It ended up being quite an extensive research on the subject and the problem of how to solve it. We spoke to authorities, we spoke to shelters, we spoke to different people. Initially, it was supposed to be a documentary. But then, because it was also the pandemic year, and also because of many ethical problems and actual ingrained, let's say, prejudices and things that are too complicated to go into, we decided to make it more of a fiction film, but one that would resonate with both our own public here, but also an international audience, to highlight this problem and also give it a human face and show that it's quite commonplace and that everyone can sort of fall into this. without actually realizing. And this is what we actually realized it's much more commonplace as opposed to being some sort of an extraordinary one-off situation. And this is how it all started. And of course, it was supposed to be a longer project because of the lockdown. We weren't able also to realize it on the scale that we wanted to, but at least, again, like Alex said, it teaches you resilience and resourcefulness. So with a very small group of very enthusiastic people who were really, let's say, burning with the idea, we managed to find a space. We ended up filming it completely indoors because we weren't allowed to leave outside.
Yeah.
So we sort of, bent some rules, got together and stuck ourselves into our friend's apartment and made this film. And yeah.
Amazing. And how did you find the actors? Were they already friends of yours to come on this journey with you, or did you go through casting?
We did a casting with the local actors, so they're both professional actors, and we tried quite a few people, and it was over the summer, so we could still gather outside in small groups, and kindly, people were providing also spaces for this, and then finally when we filmed it in autumn, we already had our 2 actors on board.
So as we've come to that stop, I am going to move back. I'm going to move back away from this screen now onto the large screen. So that was a really sneaky preview of your film. So where is it screening next? How is it doing on the festival circuit with such a strong message behind it? It must be doing quite well.
Yeah. So we're going to show it hopefully in London soon. And we recently had a big screening in Baku, which wasn't part of a festival. It was more of an event dedicated to, let's say, women's rights. And we had a punk rock performance by a feminist band at the same time, and a panel discussion. It was quite a big turnout in Baku, so that was very nice. And so we'll see how else it does. I think generally it's quite a difficult topic, and so I'm getting different responses from people to it, but it was a very important one for us to tackle, and it's interesting to see how people react to it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting because what Alex was talking about earlier with when there's something to say and it needs to go beyond just words sometimes and things like that. I have always been a firm believer. I fell in love with documentary. That film can be such a powerful vehicle to talk about social awareness or issues and things like that. It's interesting that you switched to fiction, but of course to still sort of like say talk about a somewhat stigmatized subject matter.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think especially with films like these, the most important thing is to get it to as large an audience as possible. So I think I will probably not wait the usual time and release it with a wider, to a wider audience with some tips as to where to get help if you end up in such a situation.
So will you be doing this with the charity?
Yes, right now in talks with UN Women here in
That's brilliant.
Yeah, to see how best to approach this to make it most effective.
Yeah.
And I know this is maybe outside of your immediate, let's say, artistic concern, but I do like it when the social and the artistic can come together and complement each other to, to come to some sort of good result at the end, to be helpful. And hopefully it will be.
Definitely. So will you sort of therefore be releasing it on something like YouTube or Vimeo?
I'm
just trying to get it far and wide.
Far and wide with some good tips, and one of the versions of the film had some statistics also at the end of it, so I think we'll put that back in to have some sort of broader sense of what's going on, but also what can be done.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
And you said that you were working on another film project. What stage are you at?
Well, I'm actually about to go off into the mountains of Azerbaijan, and this is where I am right now, and to shoot my next short. It will be very different. No social commentary there. It's a very mystical story.
Cool.
Forest that looks like an enchanted forest. I can't tell you too much, but I hope that once we're done with it, I can share it. And it's a mystical alter ego redemption belonging story that also again will be shot in Azerbaijan and inspired by, let's say, local customs rituals and beliefs that are kind of esoteric as well. So hopefully it will be something very different.
And
Great.
you're directing this, producing. What
Yeah.
are your roles in the project?
At this stage, I think the involvement, like Alex said, we do everything.
Yeah,
And,
wear all the hats.
yeah, all the hats. So I wrote the story in the summer, and it took a while to again bring the team together. So finally we're ready to shoot it, and so I'll be directing it, and I'm also involved on the production side, but I'm working with local producers here in Baku.
Nice.
Who are really helping, and yeah, so I have a couple of production teams who are helping me out.
Fantastic. And I guess finally then, my last question to you is, what made you want to get into this industry? Was it a particular film, a moment, maybe a book that you read?
Well, I think, like Alex, actually, as a kid, I also used to, write theater stories, and, my parents had bought a camcorder early on that we used to make family films. At the time, the place where I lived didn't have, let's say, art wasn't so much a priority, so I didn't study it immediately, but then I ended up studying art and working with artists for the last 10 years. So I worked with many artists on artist films and other contemporary art as well, but a lot of artist films that I commissioned and produced. And I think through conversations with artists from all over the world, it was always very interesting how you can breach gaps in the kind of verbal but also non-verbal way, how you can really tell beautiful stories, especially when you are from these uncharted, exotic territories. And yeah, so I think once the, sort of at the run up of the pandemic, I was sort of ready to also tell my own stories. And so I think their work and the artists that I've worked with really inspired me to also try and tell my own stories, and this is what I'm doing now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both of you for sharing your stories with us here today. We've got someone called Scuba Beat saying, interesting talking, guys. So they've enjoyed the chat here today.
Thank you.
So thank you again for jumping on, and yeah, good luck with everything that you're working on.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you
luck with
so
that
much
shoot.
for giving the platform. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Thank
so much,
you.
guys.
Bye.
Oh, she's gone.